Welcome to one more pack where we're going to go through a couple Lorcana pieces of news that have developed over the last couple weeks.
We are talking Lorcana here once again, and we're excited because there's a lot of new cards being revealed, and the metas are changing, we think.
You're going to see it on screen right now, so let's just talk about it immediately. What have they done to Bucky?
Shirt.
He is unplayable, I think.
Yeah,
Like
basically.
okay, we'll talk about the changes first. So original Bucky right here on the two cost ward, so it can't be targeted. When we play Floodborne, each opponent chooses and discards a card, a 1/1 quest for one. That's like the old school Bucky. New Bucky, three cost. Huge difference in terms of tempo, upping the cost.
No ward.
Whenever you play a Floodborne character, if you use Shift to play them, each opponent chooses and discards a card. Massive reduction to the ability. And then, no more ward. It's gone.
Done. The card's done. It's useless.
This to me seems like a huge overcorrection.
They really just, I think they got a lot of feedback, and they just said, we are putting an end to this card. We're not even going to make it, like, they weren't even trying to find middle ground. They just said, how do we make this card basically unplayable? And they did it.
I feel like any one of the changes would have been sufficient. If it didn't have ward, people could remove it and then that would feel better. If it costs three, then you're looking at a scenario where the tempo of that deck shifts a little bit later, and the later that deck goes, the worse it is. And then the Floodborne shift thing completely changes how the card works.
Like it, because Robin Hood was one of the big ones that would get put together with, right? So they would, and it is a shiftable card, but it's not. It makes no sense.
Is a very weird choice. To go through kind of like the god line of the current setup. Turn one Diablo, look at your opponent's hand. Turn two Bucky. Turn two Shift Diablo. They discard a card, you discard a card, but then you're going to draw after you quest with him, or he sings a song to remove something small. Turn three, you drop another Floodborne. So they've discarded two cards after you playing on your turn three,
Yeah.
which is like as good as it gets for that deck. This pushes that back a full turn, and then also you're it pushes back a full turn, and they're discarding one card now on turn three instead of two cards on by turn three, which is a huge. If you've ever been stuck in that matchup, and you just need that one more ink. Like that's such a huge change to the pace of it.
Yeah, just doesn't work. Like they just, I don't know. They took it out of our hands. They said this isn't going to happen anymore, and they didn't find middle ground, and they went overboard. So it's done.
The joke I heard was that they came up with three solutions and they were supposed to pick one, but instead someone accidentally picked all three.
That's great. That's great.
I would say I didn't like the discard deck. I thought it was unfun to play and to play against. So I don't understand why people wanted a change. That being said, I didn't want to see this. I was happy to see any one of the three changes take place. And how, this isn't a digital card game. There's thousands upon thousands of original printed Buckies now that anyone new to the game or like is going to join the game is going to be like, the card doesn't. That's not what the card says.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little confusing. I'm curious to see like there's a lot going on here, right? So there's a couple things we can talk about. And one of the things is going to be card value. So now when a card comes out and you go to a store, like someone could have went to the store a day before this news came out and paid for a Bucky, and I don't know what the cost of the card was, but let's say it was $10, and you spend $40 because you want to put four of them in your deck, and the next day the card is worthless. And I know that happens in other card games and other TCGs, and they keep some cards relevant and all that stuff. But I don't like it. I don't like that feeling. I think they need to do something else to correct a strong deck, which is not just nerfing a singular card. I think they need to make other decks more powerful. And that's just my opinion.
They could have also just banned it. Banning it would have been less confusing,
Okay. Yeah, that would have been less confusing. It
right?
still doesn't solve the problem of people invested money in this deck or playing this deck
But if
one
I
day and now they're not allowed to the next day.
I agree, right? Because the value of all the Diablos goes down, the Robin Hoods, the Beasts. Totally agree. Like we're on the same page there, I think, where you spend the money to build this deck and now it doesn't work. But I'm just like, if they needed to print an answer and they're like, hey, this is too strong right now, we'll bring up responses in the next couple sets, a ban would have sufficed to temporarily shift it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is just taking it off the board.
And also, the the discard deck did not win every single tournament out there, right?
No, it does perform higher on average.
It's not necessarily winning. So there's ways to beat it.
Yes, I agree.
That like
Um,
it's
check out our
not like it
previous
was
video.
so. Yes, we are going to link that previous video. But my point is, it wasn't so powerful that it was unbeatable. People were beating it, so it wasn't that strong.
I think, yeah,
I think they made a mistake.
I don't think it's any stronger than any of the other top decks we've seen over the last year. Like Ruby Amethyst, when it was the top deck, was about as strong, I think, as Bucky is in the current meta. I think the biggest problem is this is a very new game. This has attracted a lot of new people to trading card games, and I think undeniably playing against this is unfun for a lot of people.
Get it?
And I think they made a community choice and not a competitive choice here.
Yeah.
Well, that's the changes. Please comment below what you think. I don't know what to say. Like this is so like over the top.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
let us know your thoughts. I'd love to hear what the community is saying about the deck in general, about the changes, and have you seen a shift already in your weekend games at your local game store? Have you seen a shift in decks being brought, or are people still trying to come out with this deck with the replacement Bucky, or are people trying to play the old Bucky until they get caught? Like, I
well,
don't.
changes aren't in effect yet. We still have a couple weeks, but yeah, very huge change. We're gonna briefly touch on Fort Worth. There's a lot of channels I think that go through the whole tournament. We're just gonna recap it a little bit for those of you that haven't seen. Ruby Amethyst ends up coming on top and is the only Ruby Amethyst in the top like eight, top 16 even. Um, we knew one of the strongest cards going to the meta, but needs to be played near perfectly to win. Steel Song also making two surprise appearances in the top four. There's more of a new aggressive kind of meta that people are onto with that. Golden harps, maximum flutes, things of that nature. And then honestly, the majority of the rest of the top decks were discard. It is still a very strong deck. And some red blue making an appearance, but for the most part, we did see the strength of Emerald Steel to get into the top 64, but then Ruby Amethyst coming out on top.
Always good to see what people are actually winning with, and then you can go copy them and try to win yourself.
Yeah. I was interested by the Steel Amber list just because I mean that's a deck or color combination I like. And it's like very close to I think the standard stuff. Baloo being a new kind of addition to it. Lawrence, I think, has picked up in popularity. And just really, really leaning on the fact that this is now a quick deck, and more concerned with getting there as fast as possible. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, the big one there, like the difference from yours would be like adding the flutes again versus the lanterns. Is that something that you've done with your Steel Song deck as well?
Yeah, I had won an Ursula early on in the set championship, so I decided to play Steel Song for fun, and I played on the weekend, and I was playing two flutes only. Probably should have been four, but I was just having fun. I had signed up for a few. I felt no pressure to win another one, and so I was just enjoying myself. All right, and moving from all that stuff, let's get to the new set coming out. and talk about a few new cards. Um, we're
Shimmering Skies.
Shimmering Skies, yeah. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, why don't we go? I don't know. The big one, a big topic to cover would be items, but we could save that to the end. You want to go color by color and pick off some cards that we're interested in?
Sure. We're not going to talk about it in length, but they introduced Brother Bear. I think that's what it's called, Brother Bear, or is it just Brother? The Bear movie, the Bear Disney movie. Oh God, I should have researched this ahead of time. I remember watching this years ago. Anyways, no one expected that. That's kind of neat. Back to the cards.
I'm guessing you're not going to be putting those into your deck.
Uh, Probably not.
Okay, we got to talk about Wreck-It Ralph. I mean, it's a 7 cost. I was gonna bring this up later, but just off the bat, how do you feel about some of these high cost cards in in a world of aggro and trying to win as quick as possible? It can be a really good card, but if you can't put it down, is it still going to be playable?
So when I look at this card, the thing that kind of strikes me is I think you can get to 7. There's a very realistic game where you play this card. However, it is vulnerable to every answer in the game except for Maleficent Dragon, essentially, at that turn. So if you can't find a way to play this early, it'll be very hard to stick it. Maybe you don't need to. Maybe this is just some lore that'll win you the game. But it seems tough to play this and then still continue to play unless you're Sapphire and have a way to ramp.
Yeah, I like the fact that there are cards that you can put down and gain lore immediately. Um, that is a win condition when I look at it. There are times where you don't want to wait. You got to put down the card, but if you're at 18 and they're at 19, right? This isn't a time that you can wait to quest for the 2 lore. So the most beneficial thing to me personally that I see here is I can play a card and gain lore in the same turn. At that stage of the game, around 7 ink, could be a situation where you outright win with this card, which could be huge.
Where this strikes me as potentially viable is the steel or is Mufasa.
Yeah, which we'll talk
Mufasa,
about. Yeah,
the 5 cost Mufasa that brings something, the top card if it's a character plays it immediately. I
mm-hmm.
think that card could synergize here and maybe as a later deck. But again, if you're winning the board and you play this, you're still just winning the board and you've gotten a little faster and you're just as vulnerable to, be prepared. If you're
Yeah.
winning the board and decide not to play this and you get be prepared and then you play this, well, then you're vulnerable to Tremaine, you're vulnerable to Dragonfire, you're vulnerable so it's a weird spot.
But it's a nice card. See, this is where what I'm saying. Like, this is a nice card to have in your hand where you can almost conceal lore that you can get to. So when your opponent is calculating how close you are to winning, they need to now start to take into account, well, does he have a Wreck-It Ralph in his hand? Right? If I'm at 15 lore and I can quest for 3 on the board, you're in danger territory. So there are going to be potentially pressure to clear those 3 off the board, knowing I can Wreck-It Ralph for another 2.
Yeah, and then it becomes a question of is it better than like flutes, which is
Right.
also kind of like uncounterable or mostly uncounterable lore. And
Yeah.
it's an interesting card. I don't see it working right now. I think we need to see more things, but I think if it is going to slot in anywhere, Mufasa decks are where we would see it.
Oh, I wanted to ask, well, what's the princess card that you're going to bring back into your hand from a discard perspective?
I think that this flows really nicely into Steel Mufasa.
Yeah.
So you've got all the Cinderellas, you've got all the I want to say Cinderellas. You have Ariel. So there's kind of like we know the cards that are good that are princesses, and this kind of plays into that. And then also like getting back a 7 cost Cinderella, if you're already playing this, means you're on 7. So I mean that becomes pretty good.
Then your opponent would know next turn you're coming out big again.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%. It's definitely one of the cards I'm going to keep an eye on going forward.
I think this is the
And
card you're the most interested in, though.
well, this is definitely one. And they come up with these high cost cards, and we see some of the other colors are in this range of bringing a 9 cost card into the game that can be played almost at a 0 cost or 1 cost. And this is one. And with the steel song deck, you have ways to fill up your discard with songs. And I think that this is I'm not at turn 9 or whatever, not at turn 8. I'm saying like this could be played potentially turn, if you can play Ariel turn 3, sing a whole new world the next turn, you could get 4 or 5 songs into your discard pile pretty quickly there.
I think this is a best case scenario turn 4 play.
Yeah.
Um, on turn 4, this is a very strong card. On turn 5, its power is dramatically reduced because turn 5 for your opponent is again where a lot of answers start to show up, or turn 6. So I think this has a very good chance at being like a high roll card, either you
Yeah.
do it or you don't. Um, and when you miss in this card, holding on to a 9 uninkable is gonna suck.
And that's the thing, like, is it even worth putting in the deck, right? Like you might lose a lot of playability with some other cards that are maybe not as good at turn 4, but are maybe more sustainable at turn 4, 5, and 6 kind of thing.
You know,
And inkable.
it makes me wonder about playing Emerald, Emerald Amber, right? Because then you could play like an Inkcaster and play these crazy cards that maybe don't see play but still ink them.
Yeah, I could see that too.
Really interesting card to keep an eye on. I wouldn't be surprised if this sneaks in, but it's going to be tough to sneak it in as well, I think.
Yeah. I feel like
Uh,
people might come up with at least one in their deck for those weird situations that they need it.
I think we can both agree this is a card worth experimenting on.
Yeah.
More
Okay.
bounce.
Yeah, Madam Mim, you want to talk a little bit about this and with the how this is going to play into an Amethyst deck? We just saw an Amethyst at the top of the board there.
I think this is really interesting because right now in this color, they have probably the best or two of the best 4 drops in the game. Goat is goated, uh, and Rabbit is goated. Both cards have an effect when played, have an effect when they leave. They synergize with the entire bounce package.
Yeah.
They're almost must-ofs in any Amethyst deck. So we've added another card to that slot. That's a tough slot to get into, but man, this is a interesting card. It probably it's like, what would you want to bounce that came down on turn 3?
So what do
Yeah,
you want to bounce?
what
Like you,
what 3 cost thing do you want to bounce if you're playing this on turn 4, like on curve?
I don't know. I guess that's a good question. The other question is I just was going to bring up the when you play this character, banish her as in this card.
Yeah,
So you basically have to have another character of yours to put into your hand.
which is how the snake and the fox work. You
Yeah.
have to, or they banish themselves.
Yeah.
So it's this card, I feel like it's either going to be completely busted strong or just doesn't slot in because it's too slow. I don't think there's a middle ground. Bounce is so strong. I mean, even the so like turn 4 rabbit, turn 5 this is great, right?
Yeah.
However, then why like it could just be a 5 cost then with better stats. It would curve out better, right? The 4 slot is so spoken for already. I think this is a draft like destroyer. You see this in a draft, take it immediately. That's that effect at the start of your turn. You may move 2 damage counters. That's going to be huge.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a world where this goes into like a Ruby Amethyst, because there's some cards that give you rush. So you bounce something, save it, drop this, rush it in. It starts now with damage on it. They have to respond to it immediately. Maybe there's a line there. It's pretty interesting. I think that this is a very volatile card.
I think we're going to see it being used a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be out there a lot. I think people are going to work this type of card into their deck, and we're we might see more playability with this countering other decks than you have with where you want the versatility versus the getting a lore or drawing a card with the other two.
I think an interesting way to look at this card is it is the same stat line as Kristoff with a better effect, the bounce, and then an additional effect with the remove 2 damage. So
And it's inkable.
yeah,
So why do you not? Why wouldn't you put this into your deck, right? I
it,
don't
it
know.
again another one I think that's not a slam dunk, but will be experimented with quite a bit.
Yes.
Moving on to Emerald.
Yeah, we got a couple new Robin Hoods to take a look at. This is in is that Spanish?
It might be Italian or Spanish.
Okay.
I think it's Italian. I think my Spanish is good enough I'd pick up on that. So essentially what this does is I think it deals damage to characters. The main thing is it synergizes with this, which is for each damage character, this gets +1 to questing. Shift 3, you bring this out on turn 3, and you're questing for 3 or 2 even. That's pretty strong.
Yeah, the extra lore is nice, but you need to be doing damage to your opponent to start. So if you're playing this on turn 3, not a lot of decks are going to have a wide board. So you might only have 1 or 2 damage characters with damage on them. And the other thing at that point of the game, I feel like there's a lot of trades happening that there will be no characters on the board because you can't afford to leave uh a Cinderella on the board, or you can't afford to leave a Little Mermaid on the board against a Steel Song, or some of these other, we just talked about Amethyst, right? Like those are cards you might want to be looking to get off of the board, or that the player is able to pull their own card off of the board and therefore get the damage removed, and this guy loses the lore. So I don't think it's as valuable as we think, but it could be. It could be if you play it, and yeah, I don't know. It's hard
I
to see the usability of it.
I think this is the first card where I definitively want to see an enchanted of it. The art looks sick.
Okay.
I'll leave the gameplay out of it. I just kind of like the art. It looks
Yeah,
awesome.
fair enough.
I think this is going to be one of those cards that either is unbelievably good and broken, or it just sees no play. There's no middle ground.
I just don't see it being put in a deck, and I hope I'm completely wrong. It might be.
Speaking about enchanteds and art, we did get one enchanted revealed to us.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's good. I think it's nice. I think that is I don't think it's going to be the most valuable enchanted, but I look forward to adding it to our collection.
You,
Um
you know what's interesting about this enchanted specifically? I think this one really solidifies the artwork they're going for this set,
hmm.
which is very Wreck-It Ralph, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm wondering if this is kind of what all the enchanted's flavoring is going to be kind of tilted towards.
We did have a little bit of a darker set with Ursula,
Hmm.
where everything kind of had like a kind of evil vibe, and this is like the goofy heroes standing up against that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We've gone from dark lore to now kind of just some fun.
Frying pan as that armor is awesome. That's
Yeah, it's
very
very good.
creative. Yeah.
All right, moving on to Sapphire.
Yeah, Sapphire has a couple interesting cards. This is I put this down here, but we can talk about it with the items. For me personally, I see this card, Medal of Heroes, being huge with with a Lucky Dime situation, or where you already have lore ramping so high with some of these cards. Is it Bell and I'm thinking of the guy's name here now.
Tamatoa.
Yes, yeah.
So Tamatoa and Ariel.
Tamatoa Ariel, where you're getting 4 extra lore or 3 extra lore, or three extra lore there on each of those cards, and then you add 2 with a Lucky Dime, and you're making that win happen. How many times have people out there spin at 10 lore and just get smoked by somebody putting up 10 lore in one turn or 11 lore in one turn? And I think this is going to add to it.
I don't think this makes the cut.
No way.
I think the two, so when you get to those Tamatoa Lucky Dime turns where you're doing this crazy lore jump, usually you're maxed out on the ink you're spending. And I don't think you can afford the two to banish the item to get the +2.
Interesting.
So, and just to give you like, so the scenario where this is optimal in is not when you're using Tamatoa or or Ariel because you're banishing the item and reducing your item count. So if I use this on a Tamatoa, for example, it's -1 +2, so it's just +1. So it maybe it helps the deck go faster, and that's kind of the where they do this a couple times and don't care because they know they're going to get other items out. I just worry that okay, optimal scenario. You turn one popsicle, turn two this, turn three quill, which means you're not one jumping ahead, but this gives you another two drop, so maybe that's fine. Or Quill or Mickey, and then you turn four Hiram, banish the popsicle, draw two. Then you can't banish this item to get the effect using Hiram. So it kind of like,
Right.
okay, so yeah.
I was going to say that I totally agree with you. I'm talking about putting this card into that deck, and I think the idea is that you can turn your other characters. You have a Tamatoa or you have an Ariel, and you already have cards that are work well with Lucky Dime. This could, if you don't draw those cards, you could use this with another one of your characters to get to 3 lore, and then Lucky Dime to get 6. So you don't need to wait for those big drops sometimes, or you don't need to wait for one of those other cards. This kind of turns any card in that deck into a potential Lucky Dime candidate. That's more
That
along
is
the lines.
actually that is a really interesting point. I did
That's
not
more
think of
along
it.
the lines I was thinking.
I did not think of it in that light. That's kind of spicy. All right. I'm skeptical, but I went from I don't think this is good now to you've piqued my curiosity.
Yeah. So there's two other cards I wanted to talk about in this Sapphire set, and they're both high cost cards. And this was going back to the discussion we had earlier about they come out with these like very cool looking cards and they're high cost and they have crazy abilities, but are they playable? And this is one of them, Mufasa, an 8 cost uninkable card with 4 lore, which you're, even if you could be um lucky enough to get it off once, but you get to double your inkwell. I mean, you just talked about at this stage of the game there not being enough ink to go around. This could double your inkwell at turn 8,
Yeah.
or actually technically turn 9 if you have to play this turn 8.
So I think you're only playing this in a ramp deck.
Yes. Yeah.
I think I think reasonably you can get this out on turn if it goes everything goes well, like turn 5, turn 6 maybe.
Then you're pulling back 2, so you're
Yeah.
go from, if you play this at cost 8, you're actually only have 6 ink.
And then in theory, you could even
Well,
re-ink, right? With Quill and your own turn. You have two more ink available for that turn.
yeah.
There's this card at 8 cost, uninkable in any other color is hot garbage.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know about this one. This could be unbelievable, or it could just be too slow. There's no middle ground. Um, direct removal because you're not getting up to 9 strength and you're not letting him quest. So we're talking like dragon fires, dragon fires. That's it, really. That gets rid of it, like on curve.
Like
Uh,
if you think about when he can realistically is going to be playing on the board, you're not going to be prepared.
yeah,
You're in trouble.
this is if this sticks around for one turn, it is game winning or can be game winning.
Yeah.
Getting random cards back from Inkwell is also nuts. We've
Yeah.
never explored that mechanic before. That's brand new.
Yeah.
And in the color again, that can make use of any
You're
cost at any
inking,
time.
you're inking your items too, right? Like you might be like, oh, I'll just ink a popsicle because I could just pull it back out, right? Like, and you have usable cards in the inkwell.
25% chance you get it back.
Yeah.
Really spicy. This is the kind of card I love to see because I think you can make a deck around it and it could be fun. Like this is a fun card on top of it being insane.
Yeah.
I guess I'm playing Sapphire now. I had never.
Mufasa, Medal of Heroes, Lucky Dime. I mean, that's a crazy, crazy 12 lore turn
So
potentially.
let's say it's turn 6. Play Mufasa because you've ramped. Get 2 ink back. Re-ink. Play Metal. Next turn, quest or play Lucky Dime. Quest. Get the mana back. Metal Lucky Dime. Yeah, that's you could get a hand real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I think this is weirdly going to make Ruby better
Yeah.
because it is the direct removal color. So it might force more Ruby, which I mean, maybe we don't need, maybe we do.
Yeah.
Um,
The other card I wanted to talk about quick was
oh yeah,
Merlin, actually. Um, and it might actually, I think it's at the very bottom here. You pull this card up. I know it's a 6 cost uninkable. The shift 5, like I wish that was lower, but okay. But you can pull any card out of your deck and put it into your hand.
like Mufasa.
Like exactly like Mufasa. I don't know if you would. It depends when you could play this, but that type of control and power, like you're whatever you need, you play this and you can have it, right? It's a huge card to have.
I mean, in theory, play this on turn 4 with a quill, right?
Yeah.
And then turn 5, you're playing that Mufasa, and
Right.
there's only a couple answers in the game that can deal with it.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was you don't need to fill your deck with Mufasa because you need to draw it. You just put one Mufasa in your deck and a couple Merlins, maybe a little bit more useful at two lower, 3/7 at 6 cost, but you're playing it earlier
But you
and you're
do have to
pulling that.
shift them.
Sorry,
You do have to shift them.
you have to shift them. Yeah.
So that also complicates things and makes Blurple back on the menu.
Yeah.
I mean, Sapphire Amethyst is ramp draw, right?
Yeah.
And that could
That's
work.
I like it. I like looking at new cards, what's coming out, and what you could potentially put together.
I'm excited to see how that plays out. We've also not explored that mechanic before of literally searching your deck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess we kind of have, but not in the same way. Usually it's like the next X amount
About
of
four
turns.
cards or something. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Steel.
Knights. Knights are back.
Okay. Stop me right here. Is this just a cool like movie synergy card setup here, or is this playable? Could we run this?
I I think, and I've not looked individually at the cards, so I don't 100% know. I suspect that yellow steel dwarves or amber steel dwarves is fully legitimate.
I
I
think so.
There's a lot of cost reduction in dwarf to dwarf. There's a lot of synergy, the Snow White cost reduction. There's a lot of ways you could play this one out, and it is kind of terrifying.
I
Tell you
I
what,
honestly I was looking at this and I couldn't stop thinking like how do I put this deck together? How do I put this and what color combination do I put it with? I think you're right. I think anyone would say that those two go really well together. I could be deadly. I think
um, it's kind of like so dwarves have always been fringe competitive, kind of like brooms are now, where they're good, um, in a lot of situations, like together, if you can get a bunch of them out, and they've suffered from the fact that I think there is enough of them, and this kind of solves that problem. I mean, turn 2, oh my God, these are more snow. I don't know what to do with this. These doors are like good. Like Doc is just playable.
yeah,
Um, on like you just see this card in games. So you turn 2 Snow White, turn 3 Doc. Now you're talking about playing any dwarf for 2 less easily.
yeah.
I don't
Uh,
know. They're all
gonna
strong.
ramp.
The dwarf meta is real, and everyone should be afraid.
I'm excited to see it. I hope it works out. I think there will be some challenges. And it might just be one of those cool movie synergy decks that doesn't really work, but I want to see people put it together. I like it.
I think if there's a starter deck for Shimmering Skies and it has dwarfs in it, that's the starter deck.
Yeah. And I mean, resist +1 for each other knight character you have in play. I know it means you're probably trying to go wide, like you're trying to get as many dwarfs as you can out there. You're going to have to. Um, but it's going to be hard to take this stuff off the board unless you're clearing the board, right?
And they all synergize. Like they all synergize. Oh,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I hope this works. I really hope this works. This is what I want to play.
Yeah. Very cool.
Okay, last thing we're going to talk about for today. This is kind of interesting. Every color is getting an item, and they're all getting these Chromicons.
Chromicon?
Chromicon? Yeah, that makes sense. Color. I'm thinking time, like chronergy. Never mind. Okay, we'll go through them one at a time. During your opponent's turn, whenever one of your characters is banished, you return chosen character to player's hand. Good. Just solid. Not busted, I don't think. Drafts. This is gold.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it's kind of interesting because in a lot of people are playing Emerald with the discard deck. Um, so whenever one of your characters gets banished, you're returning a card to their hand. They have to be wary that that card may be discarded the next turn. Like if you have a way to discard that card, and that's something to, like people might be less inclined to banish one of your things because they're afraid of the consequences if you have this out there.
People have been counting and teching against Diablo
Yeah,
specifically, and now this means you could not remove Diablo from the game.
right. Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
All right, each player may draw a card.
And I think it's, if you're playing an Amethyst deck, you know how powerful it is for you to get the cards you need, and you're always trying to draw and put the right hand together, all those bounce cards, etc., etc. And I think at the cost of letting your opponent draw a card, I think you're still going to play this.
I think this is very spicy because you're the one doing it. So even though you're both drawing a card, you're the one with the tempo to play the card. So
Yes.
there's a lot of scenarios where I mean, we've all been there. Your opponent has 4 cards, you have 1. You don't care if they have 5 if you can get a second card.
Yeah, and it's free.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Uh, I feel like it's counterintuitive to the way a lot of these cards play.
Yes. Entering exerted just means you can't use it the same turn you play it, which is fine. Banishing one of your items, I guess you're already doing that with the Sapphire deck. The one thing that banish one of your items to gain 2 lore, like we talked about, is sometimes you just need that win condition. And if you're already playing a deck that's going to have 4 or 5 items out there, I guess you can do it at 4 cost. To be honest, I don't really like it.
There's a couple character cards that ready items. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. It is interesting though.
Yeah.
Amber,
Yeah.
sticking with the healing theme.
Yeah, remove up to 1 damage from each of your characters. From each of your characters, like that's huge. But also, most people kind of focus fire one character, so it's rare that a bunch of your characters are going to be ticked down for 1. But it does with the healing theme, like you said, inkable 2 cost. I think you're putting it in your deck.
I think it probably doesn't make the cut because you want to go wide and you're trying to play this later in theory. But I mean, it's thematic. I don't think this one works.
Yeah.
This is terrible. Deal 1 damage.
I mean, I just don't see how you're playing a 6 cards at that late in the game to put this down. What does that do?
That is because there is an item that does this already. That's better. I can play this on turn 3,
Yeah.
right? Why do I want to wait to turn 6?
I mean, the 2 cost, like it costs you 2 lore to do that, the plasma blaster, but this one is free. But it's just at that stage of the game, it doesn't make sense to just do 1 damage. So I don't see why this is,
There
yeah,
is a beast card that re-readies when someone is damaged, so you can quest out with him a bunch.
yeah,
Well, maybe, I don't
yeah.
know.
There's also that card, that item, the arrow that does 1 damage as well.
I
So
think I think that's probably just too bad.
yeah, I think if that said 2 damage or 1 damage to each character, it'd be a little bit more playable.
1 damage to each character would be nuts
And
and
the
very
count,
interesting.
but also this similar to the healing one of each character. This is should be the opposite, and at that 6 cost, not inkable.
I'd love to
Yeah,
s- I'd love to see Sapphire Steel and have like 2 or 3 of these out because I think that'd be hilarious. You could by turn 6 get your third one kind of thing and be like blah 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 blah. Blah.
put the deck together.
That would be so funny.
Put
Uh
the deck together.
Probably unplayable, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Did we go through we didn't go through Ruby.
You're no. 1 cost and it's inkable. I don't see why you can't put this in your deck.
I think this goes right into the item deck, red blue.
Yeah. So
It gets Maui up to castle range, which was a huge problem before. You don't have to pay for the activation. You don't have to banish the item to activate it, like with Vortisphere and stuff. I think this is an immediate add to a lot of decks.
yeah, it's hard not to put that in your deck at that cost.
Yeah. Anything with Rush gets like I think this is just very solid.
Yeah.
All right. That's it for our kind of preview into Shimmering Skies for now. A little recap of Fort Worth. Last thing we'll talk about, absolute last thing. Prediction time right now. What is the winning color from Toronto now that Bucky's gone and the whole thing has been thrown into flux?
Oh man, I think it's tough. I think it's going to be. I think it's got to be the same color that won Fort Worth. Is it Ruby Amethyst?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's going to be it. I
I'm
think
call-
Amethyst is too strong right now.
I'm gonna call it now. I think it's gonna be Amethyst Steel.
With this steel. Okay.
Yep. I think it has a reasonable chance of beating Ruby Amethyst, and I think
Yeah.
it does well enough against everything else. That's my out of the box prediction.
I think the main point is that we both have Amethyst in there, and really the other color you're choosing is just supporting that the same deck, right? They're the same play style, and you're just choosing how you're going to support it. Amethyst to me right now is the deck to play. Yeah, very cool.
Thanks for watching. One more pack.
Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Hopefully we can keep coming out with some valuable content for you. And we will be opening some Shimmering Skies when it comes out. So stay tuned.